So, thank you very much for your presentations. There are a few questions I thought to ask from all of you. Some questions I wanted to ask from all of you, but I must say the situation where Estonians ask from foreign people what do you think about us reminds me of this old Estonian anecdote that a German, a French person and Estonian go to the zoo and look at the elephant, and the German thinks, I wonder what the elephant thinks about the world. The French person thinks, I wonder what the elephant thinks about the food, and the Estonian thinks, I wonder what the elephant thinks about me. So this is something we Estonians are always interested in. What do you think about us? I was previously mentioning that we haven't seen very big interest from European art historians towards Estonian art, but you three are examples of different situation. You have been interested in Estonian art and in Konrad Mägi, and I wanted to ask how this interest began and what was your first impression of Konrad Mägi's work? And you can use microphones maybe.
Shall I start? Thanks for Kumu Art Museum permanent collection exhibition. So it was there I saw the very first time Konrad Mägi's paintings in a room, and I suddenly saw that I am looking at the works more time than many others, and especially I remember paying attention to the portraits, the human figures, and saw something very alive and joyful also according to the colors and everything. So my investigation started from there, and from there on I have been very lucky to receive a lot of support and information from Estonian Art Museum and you all from Mägi Foundation and so on. But also it was also, of course, a kind of professional interest in that sense that as a museum director, I think it's very important to show, not only look kind of overseas, for example, somewhere very far away to raise people's interest, but we are turning to an era where we are very interested in the local scene, and in locality I here mean more than just Finland or some very small locality, but rather who are our neighbors, what is the thinking behind, are there similarities, are there differences? These all tell us about our own way of life and art. So I had this idea of bringing Konrad Mägi to Finland and make the museum exhibition quite early on.
Yeah, I really remember very well when I saw Mägi for the first time. It was in Espoo, in your fantastic exhibition. And I have to admit I was completely thrilled, but I was also shocked, and I was more and more thoughtful later, because I asked myself, why didn't I ever heard about these artists? I wrote my PhD about this time, 1910, 1920, in the Nordic countries. And I studied quite a lot of years this period, and I never heard about him. So that was really a shock for me, because the quality was so high. It was an artist really talking to me, and I was so thrilled about the quality, the amount of works, the whole life of this artist. And this is really a point where I thought, oh, we really have to open our minds much more, and we should not always go the same ways with French art, German art, Norwegian art. Europe is so rich, and especially this time around First World War, where so many things happened, so many new things that you were into in your lecture. So for me it was really a positive shock, and I'm very happy that I could contribute to bring him to another country.
Thank you. I think that my interest towards Mägi races from 1990s when I first acquainted with Estonian art. I think it was first time I went to the Estonian Art Museum, it was in Toompea Hill, and then later, of course, in Kumu. And I was making my studies of Finnish art of that period, and I tried to find some parallels and things, how art notions concede and so on. And this, of course, Mägi is very exceptional. When you see his work, you get interested in who is this fellow, and you want to know more. Nowadays, I'm more interested, or since that time, interested more about these questions of metropolitan versus provincial, and how actually in the so-called provinces, if you see it from London or Paris or Berlin, other places, how there are actually very interesting phenomena which you must consider from their point of view and not just see them as imitations from some metropoles. And this relation which Mägi has, like this love-hate relationship towards metropolises, and if he's somewhere he wants to go other places, and it repeats itself, so it's very interesting. And nowadays I'm also thinking about this Baltic Sea region, what kind of connections there are, and this was very eye-opening to hear about these Brücke artists in Baltic Sea regions and see these similarities. And also when I talk about this Voringer's ideas, how they in a way are in the air on that time. So it gives me many ideas about possible exhibition projects and so on.
So it means that you were all already art professionals when you first met with the oeuvre of Konrad Mägi, and that means that you put his work on some kind of background of what you already knew about European modernity. When you compare Konrad Mägi with what you already knew about European modernity, what is in his works that is different, and what is similar to this canonical European modernism?
Yeah, it's a very big question. You could write PhD about it. But I think, of course, we perhaps as art historians, we always look with special glasses. We have the French glass, the German glass, the Nordic glass, and then we have some items like expressive, introvert, extrovert, and so on. But I think in the end it's always about the individuality, and if it's a typical French artist, it's boring. If it's a typical expressionistic artist, it's boring. It has to be, of course, it has a special level in the time. You need all these items that were discussed before, but in the end it's the energy, the individual energy that has to fit in a time, that has to be ahead of his own time. That is most important, really, to convince that you understand that is a very important artist that really opened more ways for a lot of others behind him.
I was in the very beginning wondering or reflecting Konrad Mägi's work towards the discussions and ethos about Finnish modernism, and especially when I found the color life of the works of Mägi somewhat different. I started to reflect that on the same era that actually in Finland there was a strong effort of criticizing color painting. So kind of the French color painting and the color palette was being seen as superficial element in art, so that in real art, in real Finnish modernism, one should, according to the critics of that time, one should rather use earth color palette. And since I saw Konrad Mägi, I started to wonder that how come it's even brighter that some of the Finnish renowned artists like Edefeld or Enkel, who really made also these color paintings, but they are sort of still a little bit polite with the color, and Konrad Mägi is just. So that was something that I kind of wanted to investigate more. That how come? What's the difference there now in Estonia? So maybe Konrad Mäg. There are good things as well. That being in a kind of a country without so strong. Kind of an art scene, professional level or world at that time. So Konrad Mägi didn't face these kind of fences that some of the Finnish artists faced. So it's only very recently some of these color painters in Finland have gained their reputation and the acceptance and kind of raising their color works onto the pedestal. So this is something that it is quite interesting, and there you can actually learn, as I said in my first comment here in the panel, I think this is something that really shows, teaches us something about Finnish art history also at the same time. So I paid attention to the differences then in this field.
Thank you. I agree with Pilvi in that sense that the power of color in Mägi's art is exceptional, and even though there would be some similar notions I compared it now with the Finnish art, so there may be similar notions, but the art is not at that level. It's not so good, so to speak. I mean his contemporaries in Finland. When it comes to dealing with the color in this kind of emotional level and expressive level, but it's also about some color combinations which are interesting. I recently wrote an article about reception of Estonian art exhibition in Kunsthalle in Helsinki in 1929, and they told that there are not, because from Finnish perspective, which was a bit like, I would say, a bit like colonial in a way that they tried to teach what Estonian art should be like, and they were thinking that Mägi's landscape from Vilsandi is not, because there are no local colors, they didn't consider it Estonian, that it would imply somehow Estonian identity. So that's interesting. And I think that Pilvi has also written about this purple or light red, and those reds and blues and greens and yellows, they are not typical for Finnish or maybe not Swedish art. They sometimes this kind of combinations which not actually come from Russia, they come from their Blaue Reiter scene or they come from Akademi Vasiljev, were considered in Finland like they had some Russian influence. And I remember that there was a book written about Estonia in 1925 or something. It was translated in Finnish, and there were Friedebert Tuklas and I think it was Alfred Vaga, the art critic, who wrote about, and they also told about that they should be cleaned from these Russian influences and go to the classical French models. But luckily, those artists have not done that.
When we continue with the question of color in Konrad Mägi's creation, then I have in mind this kind of maybe a little bit provocative question that maybe the thing that color was so important for Konrad Mägi is also an obstacle how to analyze him nowadays, because when we look at modernism art, then we always see also kind of story, or we recognize a motive. And in today's art analysis, this political subjects, political motives, political analysis is very important. And color has been seen as only, some kind of aesthetical thing which doesn't have any political value. and therefore it has been seen as only a tool in order to make beautiful images. What I wanted to ask is, how do you see the question of color in today's art analysis, and how can it be used also today?
As I was already also commenting this topic in my lecture, and I have been writing about it in few articles, I really still feel that the position of color in art criticism and study research is still kind of very lowly rated, so that it's still the composition, the theme, these kind of the line, meaning the form, it's still very much there, and or the medium. So it comes in the last spot. But well, one effort has been writing about these articles, and the politics of color is one thing which is very much interesting and important since, especially since the 60s and the pop art or these kind of later contemporary paths. So in that sense, I would find it interesting to also to look at Konrad Mägi's work, which is elder, from this perspective, and not only as aesthetical aspect.
Yeah, I think Mägi's colorism give us a new kind of net to put them together with other artists. We were in with the Blauer Reiter, for example. Of course, we can think about early Kandinsky works. And we have on one side, we have depicting, on the other side, we have creating. And the creating part is, of course, last but not least, the most important one to really have the artistic, to get artistic personality. And his colorism, for me, it's very connected also to a kind of plastic structure. So it's not the pure color, it's also this kind of more or less three-dimensional structure that gives this painting this very unique life and breathing and pulsating, which I think is very unique in this time.
Yes, I also think that it's the materiality of color and how it's tempting and how it makes all kind of affections for you. It's interesting what you said, because I also, maybe it was yesterday or just a few days ago, I became to think about this color orchestration which Mägi has in some of his painting. It's like very semantic, or very structure is very obvious. So it made me think a bit of František Kupka's some works, even though they just coincide, happens to coincide, but there are maybe some similarities also in that direction, which is coincidence. But I mean, just this structure and orchestration of colors and how they make such a strong effect.
One more thing about this. I think it would be lovely to see research and study about Mägi's colors according to the spiritual understanding of the color of that time, because many theorists and writers, also ones of mentioned today, were creating their own sort of esoteric color theories, and it would open up a fantastic world of interpreting also Mägi's work through those color theories, just as a play, not that we would kind of catch some specific information from how he thought or how he painted, but just as a play, joy of play of how differently one can interpret works from that age, and we all know that he was very interested in the spiritual and esoteric things, and that is a field at the moment in art history and art theory which is very much investigated at the moment. So Mägi would, and maybe other Estonian painters would deserve their page on that current art history which is being written at the moment. So there would be an interesting topic for kind of contemporary researchers, which makes 1920s very sexy, as mentioned.
May I say, I remember that you wrote in the biography that about Steiner, Rudolf Steiner. So do you know more about this connection of Steiner and Mägi?
Unfortunately not. We know that Mägi was interested in Rudolf Steiner's theosophy and his teachings. We know that Mägi was in Oslo when Rudolf Steiner was in Oslo, but was he in his lectures? We don't know. There have been rumors that Mägi made a portrait of Steiner, but those are only rumors. And I must say, like Pilvi mentioned, that Mägi was very interested in spiritual world. This was and still is a topic that is not researched in Estonian art history. During Soviet times, it was impossible. And actually, we also have very little information today about it. Just recently, in the collection of Art Museum of Estonia, there is a small drawing, and its name was decorative drawing, because it was just abstract, beautiful drawing. And then, I don't remember who suddenly said, this is not just decorative drawing, it's actually a scheme from Kabbalah. So now, totally new interpretations about this little piece. So this is also a field where we can research more this esoterical background of Konrad Mägi's creation. And the third topic which would be interesting, especially today, is of course the relationship with nature. One of the defining features of Mägi's works has been this very close, intimate, but also brutal relationship with nature. How do you see this relationship with nature, again, in comparison with European modernists?
I think his standing point is typical from the city dweller. Even if he's not born in a very big city, he has this position, which is quite typical for all this neo-romantic currents in this time. So he sees the nature from the city, from the metropolis, I think. And that's the reason Timo was in it, this relation with romanticism, and to put the viewer into the landscape, to see and to feel the nature. I think this is an important position.
I think that this vitalism and all these current topics on Mägi's time, it seems like his art is a kind of a manifestation of this vitalism, and if one wants to go deep to the biography or find some life and art, so of course there is this, because he was he had illnesses and then he was an athlete also, so he wanted to be strong and he wanted maybe it to be shown in his art if one wants to mix one's life with one's art, so that would be one kind of interpretation.
Yeah, I would definitely see the vitalism also in his use of landscape as a motive so constantly, and repeating it so that, like I said, it's not about the place itself. It's rather kind of a. I would like to say that Mägi was a symbolist painter, and not in a stylistic way, because there is only a couple of symbolistic works, but maybe the nature was a symbol, or where the area where he could reach something behind the visible also at the same time as looking at the landscape, because there are such big power behind the nature. And he at the same time wants to show the power of painting, so these become kind of one aspect, one unity. in his works.
Okay, before I move to our last question, I wanted to ask, are there any questions from the audience? If not, then I would like to ask from you, like I mentioned earlier, our big concern is how to bring not only Konrad Mägi, but Estonian art history to European art history and how to do it. And you are directors and curators in big museums, European art institutions. Do you have any tips what we could do, how we can introduce Estonian art history?
I think you do a lot of very good things already now with this conference, to support a lot of activities in our countries. And I think you're on a very good way, and I think this network will be bigger. I hope there will be more exhibitions. Of course, exhibitions and connected with exhibitions, program with lectures with students is perhaps the most important thing, because then you really can start a discussion, and you can get a lot of new reflections, and you anchor the artist in other traditions. So yeah, I think you are on a very good way, and of course I'm very grateful to be part of it with my colleagues.
I personally think that the groundwork is always research. So as we know and heard today, or also how much the foundation and also Art Museum of Estonia are doing for making Mägi and others raise the awareness, but I think that the research is it's a long way. It's not kind of a quick win, but it is something that all nations do on their art and culture. So I think basically it starts from there, and you have been doing that, of course, but maybe somehow enlarging and deepening that level. If it's structures, if it's financing, if it's what it is, I don't know. But maybe it starts from there to make the next step also. And then another thing I would say that at the moment this also I'm also talking about Finland and Finnish art at the same time, because we are all here in the north. We are peripheric. Maybe it's time to not to compare that much to Europe or talk about Europe. It's about Estonia. It's about Finland. So maybe just to have a self-esteem and courage.
Yes, I agree with that, and it's easy to start with having, and I'm happy that you have had these kind of seminars, conferences. First, students can have lectures, they can have one topic, then it can be turned to the article, it can be turned to larger research, and there are publications, and that's how artists and things come known. And it also makes me think that there's always a danger when you give voice to someone else who comes outside, that there's a danger of this kind of appropriation. That, okay, you think that you know about Mägi more than we do. How come? So that would be very nice to have research made here in Estonia. Yeah.
Okay, so it's still in our hands. Okay, bad news. Well, thank you. With that, we end our scientific part of our conference, but we have some rituals. We would like to have first, I invite here Engunila, because annually our foundation gives a prize for a person who has done a lot in order to make Konrad Mägi great again.